Good evening, Razorback fans. Welcome to the one, the only Hog Talk podcast, live from the Sterling Soap and Roastery Studios, part of Believe in both radio networks on 106.7 in Central Arkansas. All live shows are presented to you by Arkansas Brewing Company in downtown Ozark. I am Porter Hayes, and alongside me, as always, is Adam Hall. And we're also brought to you by Bet Online. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchups, reports for baseball, boxing, NFL, baseball, and more. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and easiest place to place your wager, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today. Get in on the action. Remember to use your promo code BLEAV for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. And Arkansas falls 27-20. Another frustrating, heartbreaking. I don't even know what words you could say for the loss last night. It was kind of a roller coaster of events, how you thought they were going to take advantage of it, get the score back and win the game. You thought, okay, all right, the offense hadn't been moving. They finally put a drive together, and turnovers really killed us in this game.
Yeah, early on, going up 7-0, you had a lot of confidence. Down 17-7, all that's shot. But then as they clawed back, you could tell too. Ole Miss, their offense was uncomfortable the entire game. Lane Kiffin was mad about it. It just all around, that was not the performance that they wanted to put. Arkansas had every bit of chance to seal that, and they just could not capitalize on it.
Well, and to be honest, he had every right to be mad at points during the game, because I'm telling you, I even put it out there. Refs are actually favoring Arkansas for a change. That push out of bounds, I don't care. Somebody was going back and forth with me about it. I don't care if you just put out one hand and touch the guy. Both feet were out of bounds, and he shoved him. I don't care how hard it was. You got to know better than that. And they honestly got away with the flag there. There was a couple of the penalties that they just blatantly kind of threw in Arkansas's way. So they're in the first half. Arkansas had things going their way, and they could not capitalize. We say turnovers, and honestly, to goodness, this is how kind of stagnant the offense was. You could put the play calling, and they finally hallelujah one under center. But then they just go right back to 3rd and 9, let's call a draw play. And I showed you beforehand, and I don't have the audio or the video to show that, but the point I want to make is you go under center to get the first down, and then you call a draw play on 3rd and 9. And if you watch that play, and we'll get into the progressions and the reads and stuff on how KJ was last night, didn't have his best. I don't know if he was too hyped up because this was his last game in Mississippi, if he was trying to do too much. But if you go back and watch the play, if he cuts to the left, he scores or at least gets a first down. The quarterback who is engaging with the wide receiver it's like he knew they're running up the middle. And I watched it from every angle to see, well, maybe the linebacker was coming up and he thought that he could juke around him. But if he comes up to the line and goes around to the left side of the field, that's a touchdown. That's one of those touchdowns that I think Coach Pittman was talking about. If we traded some of those field goals for touchdowns, it's a whole different game. That play, and it was huge. That was a huge point in the game where you're sitting there needing to, again, take control of the game, and you just run right up the middle. So we'll get into the whole aspect of what we thought cost the game. Turnovers was a big point, but I put a lot of this on the quarterback when it comes to the 2 interceptions. Could have been 3 or 4 if you want to put it very honestly right there. So
yeah, and that, I wouldn't say that he was necessarily trying to do too much. I know that the game meant a lot to him, being his last game in Mississippi, but I think he was trying to do whatever he could to win, to score, to whatever, and it just wasn't working out. I go back to the offensive line with, which it's like beating a dead horse, but it wasn't working in the first half. So then they switched things up after coming out after halftime, and it still wasn't working. Whatever miscommunication is going on the offensive line, you know, this many games in, you know, it's just I don't know if there's hope to get it fixed.
Well, and there is, and I go back to the play calling. If you look at how they block, that they're blocking inside, and they're making this V to where you see all the time KJ is going up the middle trying to get out of coverage. He very few times did he have to roll out and try to escape the rush. It's almost like the Mighty Ducks. We're going to form this V formation and spread them out. And again, yes, the offensive line has a lot of woes going on when it comes. There was a lot of, you know, the running backs, the tight ends. There was one, I can't remember exactly which play it was, but they had a tight end, a running back. The tight end goes out on a streak, and then the running back runs right past the guy who was blitzing. He goes a little out to the left, and that guy just comes in free. Like, I know, say like I'm Rocket Sanders, and this play is designed for me to be a swing and a catch, but you know your tight end's running up. You see this guy run, I think you got to take the initiative to pick up that block. You know nobody's behind you. You know nobody's pulling. You got to sit there and take the initiative of, I'm going to pick this guy up, because even if nobody gets open, you've opened to the fact where he can run up the left side and at least get a couple yards.
Well, and then you have to look at, you know, an instance like that. It comes down to, I mean, your awareness, smarts, and coaching of not being coached to do that. Now, he just had it in his head that he's going to run to a spot and then just disregarded everything going on in front of him.
And that's where the read comes in.
Yeah.
That's where we look at, and a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people, well, you know, Enos' system doesn't fit for KJ. Well, I for once wants to stand up for Enos in this situation. I know his play calling is suspect. This has nothing to do with his play calling. But when you're a guy that you're trying to get your guy to the next level, what do you think is going to happen with KJ? You know, people were talking about KJ being an NFL type quarterback. What do you think is going to happen when he gets to the NFL? You know, you got to try to get him to the fact where he's not reading just half the field. You got to get where he's checking down. He looks at one side of the field. The announcers last night on TV were like, the Ole Miss guys are just sitting on him. Look at the two interceptions that he did throw. I mean, that pick six, as soon as he threw the ball, he knew he messed up. And granted, when that's where his footwork needs to get better when he's in the pocket and passing the ball, because he just stood there and threw the ball to a spot. If he would have kind of stepped to the left or the right, he would have seen that linebacker, who he thought was jumping back in coverage, was sitting in that zone. And when you throw the ball, you're like, and when you watch the play on TV, you're like, who is he throwing to? But when I seen the angle from behind, when he went to throw that ball, I can't remember if it was 75 or 72. Somebody was right there in front of him and he couldn't see. But when he done his forward motion, threw the ball and kind of leaned to the left, he's like, oh shit, somebody's there. He's seen that and immediately ran down the field. So that's on him. Like, you got to be able to pick up what they're covering. You got to, and also the coaching. If you got you a coach in the press box and they're seeing this, hey KJ, they're sitting on you. KJ, there's, the communication. KJ, they're sitting on you. And when you continues to do that, guess what? You're going to make bad defenses look good, because all they're doing is sitting on you in the zone.
Well, and that's like the I think it was a slant over the middle to Tesla that should have been picked. Tesla was double or triple covered, and the second he came out of his break, or 2 steps out of his break, KJ's just this whole time, and he didn't see that defender that's just sitting there watching his eyes. And he tried to break in front of it. Luckily for KJ, it wasn't intercepted, but that whole play was telegraphed. I mean, he was just eyes to Tesla the second he broke. Yeah. And it was, everybody on the field could see it.
And I'll say this too, and this is where partially on the receivers, you got to come up. If you see this guy on you, you got to come to the ball, because if you just stand there, you're hoping the ball comes to you. guy breaks in front of you. I mean, there's got to be a little bit more effort when it comes to the receivers on these routes, because that one in general, the last one that got picked, I mean, he was just standing there. Guy jumps in front of him, catches the ball, and seals the game. Even if you come up and just try to bump the guy to keep him from catching the ball, it's an incomplete pass, opposed to you still have the ball and you're trying to win the game. You know, but again, he's throwing in double and triple coverage, and a lot of that is maybe, again, he's not comfortable with his guys. We talked about it in the preseason, you know, in the very first week of getting comfortable, knowing who he can throw to. He threw some balls that were, I mean, on target. Like if he has enough time, but I think he gets flustered too quick. That could be O-line and you know, just I wouldn't say PTSD, but it's like you're so used to the pocket breaking down so quick, you've got to make a quick decision. So there's a lot of things that need to be fixed, and it really stinks because you got Alabama at Tuscaloosa looming. So, I mean, you got to really get on track.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, a positive coming out of it. I mean, the Has injury coming into this game. You know, we saw Tyrus just basically break out. Ty Washington. People weren't expecting that. You know, his only catch last season was in the Liberty Bowl for a touchdown. So then it was kind of like a sign of things to come. And then he's just been kind of, I mean, overshadowed, which rightfully so, by Has. But, you know, after that first drive where I think he had 5 catches, we didn't hear from him or hear his name called until the third or fourth quarter. Yeah. And I get you don't want to just keep going to the same guy every single time. But when other things aren't working, if that one thing is working, go to it until they stop you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's been an MO for this. How many times that they looked really good on opening drive? And either that is the other, they're allowing the other team to adjust to what you're doing. And again, that goes to that telegraphic pattern of the offense. Are they that telepathic? Okay, we're going to see what they're doing. I mean, look at the MO of this team on offense. We went up 14-0 on BYU. They come back, got a 10-point lead to come back. You're able to read this offense. That should be of, hey, we're going to try some trickeration. It's almost like last year we were hoping, don't do these double reverses and don't do these fourth and goal tight end sneaks. It's like they haven't really run one trick play this year at all.
None.
Or some kind of misdirection or some kind of deal where you're throwing the offense or the defense off, and you got a stout Bama defense that's starting to roll. You're hoping that they're down. And again, I said this before the year, when you have that back in the corner, if you're talking about your dynasty's over and they take this and they just lay back, yeah, I can say that the dynasty's over, but Bama's starting to roll. Milroe's starting to pass the ball.
Oh, yeah. You know, right before our game, they finally has a 300-yard passing game. So they developed a passing game this week right before Arkansas, so that's awesome. But with the Ole Miss thing, so I'm going to ask this, and I looked at this from different viewpoints, and this is the QB sneak on 3rd and inches. And I know, I put out there on social media and our text, wait a minute, what just happened? Because we ran a QB sneak on the 3rd and inches, KJ under center. So was that Dan Enos pleasing all the critics? Was that, and with him pleasing all the critics, was he doing it if it didn't work so that he could give a middle finger to all those people? Or was it just to appease them, or did Sam Pittman override whatever he called and said, you've got to do this?
That's tough.
Yeah.
Because again, you look at what happened on down the line with that 3rd and 9 call.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does kind of point in the direction of why didn't they run any other plays? That's the thing. Like we're talking about this misdirection, this deception. You got to run. I mean, line up under center and run that out pass like we talk about. I've said 3 or 4 times. I think it was. I think he replied to an email. I mean, yeah, it's like, okay, here it is. And I honestly, I think that moment we should have had a big roar out of the crowd like Ole Miss scored. That's how, we've seen all the memes, but take that momentum and score. you can't finally be like, okay, in 3rd and 1, we're going to finally do this quarterback sneak. Awesome. But then you lead to what it led to. So it was almost like he called this, but then KJ ends up running a 3rd and 9 quarterback draw. So was that an Enos play? Or when are we going to start thinking is KJ calling his own shots when it comes to this? Is he able to check out of this? Because if it was a quarterback draw, or does he, because there was one play where they had their RPO going, and it's crazy when they run this RPO. He's very efficient, but again, you're reading a running back and a wide receiver, because you're either going to hand it off or you've already know who you're going to throw to on the receiver. So it's a 2-read system. But to answer the question, I don't know who to put that one on. But yeah, me being petty, I kind of want to be like, well, yeah, that's him saying, you know what, y'all happy now? Are you not entertained?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I was thinking back, when I saw the RPOs and whatnot last night, and all the talk of coordinator of past versus coordinator now, the Bryles versus Enos. Everybody wanted Bryles gone. Now we've got Enos, this, that, the other. And, watching last night and seeing how the offensive line was, and seeing KJ, seeing the receivers who cannot create separation whatsoever. I don't, everybody has had issues from a fan standpoint with this pro style offense, so that it's just not working, to go back to the RPO offense. But I don't think that really matters, in the sense of that we've had an offensive line that's struggling and we have receivers that can't create separation. It doesn't matter which style of offense we're running.
Yeah. I want to answer this question right here. It says, why do we not get design plays to get KJ out of the pocket? He is so much better out of the pocket. That's blocking. Again, goes back to my point of, if you're blocking and you're fighting that V out, you're not going to be able to get out of the pocket. Because if you look at some of those plays, the guards and the tackles are sometimes even with you, or 2 yards behind you. So you're not going to be able to get out of the pocket if you can't block. If you want to get him better pocket protection, you've got to have different blocking schemes to where you're getting push. He's able to get time and throw the ball, or like the question poses, get him out of the pocket to where he can throw. There's sometimes, though, I have to disagree. When he's throwing on the run, he's not been that accurate. He has to really be able to sit and throw. There's been a lot of times where he's thrown on the run, he's been underthrowing or overthrowing. He's off target. So, but to answer the question in a short way, no, that has to go with blocking. If you're not able to block, you're not going to be able to get him the chance to get, especially if you're blitzing from the outside, you're not going to be able to get out of the pocket.
Yeah. And I mean, like you're talking about with the V and everything, we've seen it a few times this season that KJ does kind of start to move to side, and he gets tripped up on the lineman's legs, and then goes down for a sack.
Yep.
So he's not accustomed to that, I don't think. And we've seen that a few to several times of him going down from tripping up over somebody's feet.
Or he's only got one place to go. I've seen a couple times where he got chased down from behind and they tripped him up from behind. When there's no holes, you're trying to go back into that V and come out the back side of that. And either you got, and that's they disguised one of their blitzes where the guy come up and then he looped back around. So, again, that's where you got to pick that stuff up, because if you're trying to get him out of the pocket and then you blitz that way, well, that's just disaster, because you're going into the blitz. I've seen this right here a lot, and man, I'm not doing this to call anybody out or air frustrations, because you're not the only one who says this, but just because Sam Pittman is an online coach doesn't mean it doesn't transcend automatically to O-line play. That is the biggest argument, that how can you have, that's recruiting. You're recruiting, but recruiting, you got to have success. You have to have success before you look at Eric Musselman, what he's done. He's been able to go out and get kids from the portal and recruit, but look what he's done with that. He's had success. So that follows up and follows up and follows up. you're running a style of an offense where now you've got a pro guy in there running a pro style offense, but you've got to have the success. You've got, I mean, you can't just because somebody 350 pounds, like this comment right here, get 5 big guys just because you have the size doesn't mean you have the talent to block. You're not just standing there holding a guy. You have to be quick on your feet. You have to be agile. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is you've got to have continued success. And that's why I said before the year, this year is the most important year that Arkansas has had in 10 years, because either you're going to start going up with your program or you're going to start going down. And we're seeing the downward spiral of this program. People are deleting Twitters and, they're letting the noise get to them. And I know that's hard to say because we don't know how many DMs they get and mentions.
Exactly.
I'm sure their phones lock up. But you're seeing this downward spiral of more than likely 2 and 5 coming out of this stretch, and people are already moving on to basketball season. So I don't know what's going to fix this. It's going to be short of a miracle, but hopefully they can get out of this hole. And a win against Mississippi State, maybe that can kickstart them to finish out the year strong. I don't know.
Yeah, I think looking at Coach Pittman when he came in, and within his first year or two, I remember him saying that he was going to treat this like the position like he was a CEO. He's going to find and hire the right guys. He's going to trust those guys to do the jobs that they were hired for because they know better than he does about the particular groups that they coach, those positions. And that sounds great and everything, but is he letting the coaches have, I guess, not enough repercussions for when their position groups aren't performing? If there's been issues with the offensive line, whether it's, the offensive line, whether it's the defensive line, whether it's wide receivers, I mean, he should be going to those position coaches. And I don't know that he's not. He very well could possibly be. But figuring out what's going on, what's wrong, what's the issues, and then just, stop making it seem like you're just letting those coaches do their thing and you don't have a say in it.
Yeah, and that's where we kept on saying, like, look, you've got to at some point step in. And you brought up the question of the 4th and 1 quarterback sneak, or going for it, or third and 1 quarterback sneak. There's some time where you got to step in and make that executive decision, because guess what? All in all, Hunter Yurchek's going to see that this is your team. You're the one out there. You're the head of the team. It doesn't matter if your quarterback messes up, coaches mess up. It all falls on the head coach's head. You've got to make those choices. Something I really want to bring up after the break is I want to talk about a point about Dan Enos and the position that Coach Pittman that was put in that we're really totally forgetting. I'm not making excuses, but it's something to think about moving forward and really putting something in the aspect of expectations and what's really happened with this football team. And we will talk about that after the break. Attention DIYers and home improvement enthusiasts. Are you searching for the right tools and supplies to tackle your next project? Look no further than Mentor's Hardware Store. With locations in Ozark, Alma, and Clarksville, our vast selection of hardware and building materials is sure to have everything you need. Whether you're fixing a leaky faucet or building a new deck, plus our knowledgeable staff is always on hand to offer expert advice and guidance. And with our competitive prices and convenient online ordering, Mentor's Hardware Store is your one-stop shop for all your DIY needs. Visit us today and let's build something amazing together. Are you in need of legal representation? Look no further than the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson. As the oldest law firm in the River Valley, we have been serving our clients for over 100 years, with locations in Ozark, Fort Smith, and Spring. Our experienced team of attorneys provide expert guidance and advocacy in a wide range of legal areas, including personal injury, family law, criminal defense, and more. Trust in our history and experience to get the results you deserve. Contact the law office of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson today at 479-782-8813. That's 479-782-8813. Are you looking for a place to grab a cold drink and some delicious food? Look no further than Arkansas Brewing Company. Located at 201 South First Street in beautiful downtown Ozark, our establishment offers a wide selection of craft beers and tasty eats. But what sets us apart is our welcoming atmosphere and friendly staff. At Arkansas Brewing Company, you'll always feel like part of the family. So visit Destiny and Christopher Brockett and staff today and see for yourself what makes us the go-to spot for locals and visitors alike. Arkansas Brewing Company, come for the drinks and stay for the friends. Searching for premium brewery products that will take your daily routine to the next level? Look no further than Sterling Soap Company. Our handmade soaps, aftershaves, and balms are made with only the finest ingredients that give you the ultimate grooming experience. With a variety of scents to choose from, there's something for everyone. Plus, our products are crafted in small batches to ensure the highest level of quality. So why wait? Visit www.sterlingsoap.com or visit our retail store at 16 West Walnut Street in Paris, Arkansas. Shop our collection and discover the difference for yourself. Upgrade your grooming routine with Sterling Soap Company. And welcome back to the Hog Talk podcast. And before the break, I'd kind of teased something about Dan Enos and Sam Pittman. But a point I want to make, again, this is nothing to make excuses because we are halfway through the season. There should have been. But, Dan Enos was hired in January. And the way everything happened with Kendall Browse and flirting with Miami, then flirting with Mississippi State, and then, Arkansas kind of had an OC in waiting in Dow Longins. Well, when Kendall Browse decided to come back, Dow hit and took the job in South Carolina. So what if, the beginning, maybe they just didn't call it, or they called his bluff or whatever and said, we're just going to do away with you. Dow Longins is now the OC. That could have been another option and having all that time. But the point is, Dan Enos has not really been in this system for, 6-8 months. And the fact that the players now, especially with all the turmoil, if you remember the turmoil between Browse is interviewing for this and that, and then he leaves for TCU, Dow Longins has gone to South Carolina. So in an essence of, yes, Enos might be the problem and he might need to go. But what choices or who do you think would have been available in January to come in and done a better job? And again, I'm just throwing it out there that we have, we got to talk about it, because who would have come into this program in January and done a better job with this team or this offense than Dan Enos?
That's a good question, because that timing goes into a lot of all coaching decisions, unless you're just throwing the bank at somebody to get them to leave wherever they're at. Timing is everything. We can go back to look at after Chad Morris. Nobody wanted to come here. I don't care who y'all say interviewed, nobody wanted this job. Flip the script. And I'm just saying if in the future, Sam Pittman leaves in whatever way, shape, or form, the program is in a different position. And so it's going to be who can we get, who we can get then versus, or at that point in time versus who we could have gotten in the past are going to be two completely different things. But, especially after bowl games in January, you already started seeing a lot of coordinator moves, a lot of head coaching hires had already been done. There wasn't really anybody, there was nobody established out there. So it's either get somebody who has successful or a currently successful offense, who's familiar, or do you risk it on an up and comer that hardly nothing about?
Oh man, that's tough, because you've got to look at, you're in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the toughest conference. I know everything's getting stacked. So, we can even argue, is SEC the toughest conference in the country right now? We don't know that. But that is where, do you jump the gun and make a reset now? Because there still is something to salvage. Because listen, let's just be honest. This team finishes this year 4-8. And they give him and the staff one more year, and this thing goes south again, another 4-8 season. You're daggum near in the same spot that what Chad Morris had this, with better talent. I know your O-line, but the defense is playing lights out. The defense, I mean, that is my only drawback of giving Pittman another year, is because if Pittman if I could have it my way, if I knew that everybody on that defensive staff stays, part ways, find somebody who can run this thing, find you an OC who can run a high-profile offense and get this thing turned around. Because I don't think, with the shape of the new SEC and the shape of we don't know where college football is going to be 4 years from now. And if we have a 4-8 year this year and then another one next year, and you might even have that with a new coach, that's another thing that you have to think about. All right, yeah, let's just fire everybody. Okay, so let's fire everybody. Now you're starting over. New landscape of college football is coming in with the transfer portal, NIL. You see teams that are going and Colorado is turning around 1-11 years, and now they're 4-1 or 4-2. You know, you're seeing what UNLV is, but you also look what TCU's doing. I mean, they barely can do it. Brian Kelly. Look at LSU. They have the most talent pool per capita in America, and he's struggling. I mean, their defense is horrible. And so, I mean, and you're making Missouri look really, really good. That's another team. You're looking at that game that I guaranteed that KJ was going to win. I hope I stand corrected on. I hope that he wins that game. But the way they looked against LSU and was able just to throw up and down the field worries me.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to talk reset, but it's one of those, if you're going to do it, rip off the Band-Aid. But I'm with you totally that, if that were to happen, whoever came in, I mean, this defensive staff deserves more time.
Yeah.
So you'd hope that that would be able to stick around, but that's the issue. You never know when it comes to, head coaching changes. But with the changes happening, no more divisions, Texas and OU coming in. I mean, we looked at coming into this and coming into them joining the SEC of, they're going to struggle when they get here. They don't know what they're getting into. We're going to be on the up and up, and it's completely reversed. Both of them ranked in the top 15. One of them was in the top 5. I didn't look today to see where they fell to after the loss, Texas to OU. But, Brent Venables had his down year, if you will, to figure things out, and they went 6-6 or whatever, and he's got them rolling now. He got to figure it out.
I think I seen a tweet where, who was it? It was OU and Kansas State, I believe. The games they played this weekend, they got beat 97-0 last year combined, and both teams ended up winning this year. I mean, but again, I know Arkansas fans don't want to hear it, but comparing OU and the talent compared to what Arkansas has, I mean, you could turn around a program in a year or two, but then look at Texas. They're kind of in a higher tier, but in the same situation as Arkansas. They have this, this is our year. We got Quinn Ewers. We're going to be good. They look really good. And then you've seen what happened yesterday where, I mean, they battled, but they just got outplayed. I mean, Jalen Catalon got destroyed on that last pass. I mean, the dude just blew right by him. I mean, you got to have that system. You got to have that offensive power where you're going to be able to score. Like, again, Arkansas has the defense, but they don't have the offense. And it's like you're talking about changing coaching staffs. Who's going to be your quarterback next year? That's a big thing that you got to think about when we're talking about ripping off Band-Aids is, are you going to be starting over with a new coach and a new quarterback? And how is that going to play out?
Yeah, I mean that you definitely, or you have to question that because if everything stayed intact, I think we can all probably agree that it would be Chriswell. But if you're changing things, that could very well change. You still got Singleton back there, but um, that's a big question. I'm concerned with how this season is going and how it could continue to go on um, the recruits that we do already have committed just because they haven't signed on the dotted line yet. So I'm leery of the day that, and this is a big when and if that are we going to start seeing the ones that we do have start dropping off,
Yeah.
or do they stick around? Then there's a coaching change, and then they start dropping off. I mean, it's all things you've got to play into.
Yeah, and again, that's that. I think your defense is solidified, and I don't think you'll lose many people when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. Because man, I'm telling you what, I mean, yeah, they had some miscues. Clark, had a couple of plays where he missed some assignments and cost a big play. But overall, I mean, when you get put in crappy situations, I mean, and your back's against the wall, a lot of times it's going to happen. But I love how they're starting to disguise the blitzes and they're showing pressure and they're able to get athletes. You got to get the depth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, we can get all these, like the previous comment earlier. Well, you can get 5 guys to come in. Well, you're expecting those 5 guys to come and play 60 minutes. You think you're 300 pounds, but you're also pushing up on somebody 350 pounds for 60 minutes. I mean, that's going to wear and tear on you. And then you do it 10, 15 times or 10 to 12 times in a season. You got to have depth, and that's the thing that's missing the most is depth when it comes to this team on offense, on defense. But they got to have consistency to where that's where winning is key. You got to start winning games, and I just don't want it to be too late. Like the fan base, the boosters, even us.
Mm-hmm.
We think that Pittman and Enos, we give them another year, they can turn this thing around with having a full year and full off season with your squad. But man, it's like you already have so many questions on who your quarterback's going to be next year, what you're going to be doing. You this was the worst time for this kind of year because it was so much promise coming into the year. But then again, were we misled? Because I'm looking at a certain aspects of how fast they said we were, how many people were doing this many squats on this, and we were told that we have all these athletes. Were we misled on the smoke screen of look how fast they can run and look how strong they are, opposed to what they're really doing on the field?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about that, and I think it was potentially a little bit of the smoke screen, or you're just focusing on certain things, like the weights and the speed and whatever. Because I mean, it was the off season. There are things you can and can't do. So you're focusing on that, but I think maybe some of it was a little bit of a smoke screen. I think back to it was during uh, when Bielema was here, and I forget what the strength and conditioning coach his name was, but they would put out a few videos of the guys doing squats, and they even did it in the middle of Razorback Stadium on the 50-yard line. And I remember it was like when the lights come up, the freaks come out or something like that. I mean, it was a whole hype video around it. And, granted, the offensive line was better during that time, but I think that was a year that we still won 4 games that year. And I just look at, are we just doing things like, hey, look at this when we've got other issues over here?
Yeah, and goodness gracious, it's just man. I feel look, I feel bad for the fans because just what y'all have had to endure for 30 years. You have you go back to the 80s. I mean, you have some good success in the 80s with Quinn Grovey. Then you have some success when you finally got settled in with being in the SEC in the 90s with Stoner. Then you have McFadden, then you have Mallet, and then you have the big run where you had, Wilson and Allen. You have sprinkles of where your team was successful and glimpses of what this program could be. But there's a lot of years after that of just shambles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I feel bad is because you're hoping that this program turns it around, and the fans don't want mediocre, but that's what this program has been. It's
Mhm.
been mediocre. You look at the schedule, you look at their ranking. I mean, the 17 years, you're 3 games over 500, and that's not exceptional. I mean, you're being looked at right now as you're thankful Vanderbilt is in the conference right now.
Mhm.
I mean, that's where the program is. That's where we're looking at this program. Thank God we got Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and I looked at with just because after Alabama the bye week, we've got Mississippi State, and I look at it like, since we couldn't get Vanderbilt, at least we have Mississippi State on our schedule
Mhm.
because I look at us kind of at that 12th spot, be right ahead of Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, but we see a lot of stats that they're not. It's not that they're not accurate, but they're put out there to either make you feel good, to prove a
Yep.
point, whatever. So we're not going to take a chunk of Arkansas's record and a chunk of a certain amount of years and say, no, this is why Arkansas is not mediocre. This is why the fans deserve better, or whatever. Let's just look at the Arkansas program since joining the SEC as a whole. You're going to look at your overall record, and you're going to look at your recent history, whether it's your recent history under this coach or maybe your previous two coaches. But you're not going to go select a chunk of 10 to 15 years out of the middle of it and say, this is what we deserve, or this is what we should be looked at like. You're not looked at it for those 10 years. Your program is looked at for what you've accomplished
Mhm.
in your entire existence in that conference.
Yeah, and you look back, look back at the 80s. I mean, that right there was your most successful decade that you've had. I mean, you had 10-2, 9-3, 9-4, 10-2, 10-2, and that was from 85 to 89 under Kenny Hatfield. Then you look in the 90s. I mean, you went 8-5 in 95. You went 9-3 in 98, and 99 you went 8-4. So there's three good years in that decade. The 2000s, 02 you went 9-5, 9-4, back to back 9 wins. 06 you went 10-4. 07, 8-5, 09. So well, I guess you could match up the 2000s with the 80s. So in the 2000s, I mean, you ended with the 10-3 or 8-5 in 2009. Then of course we know what happened in 10 and 11, and then you went 4-8, 3-9, 7-6, 8-5, 7, 4 wins, 2 wins, 2 wins, and now here we are at 9-4 and 21. So I mean, you see what I'm getting at with these
Mhm.
sprinkles, and it's time to be where if you always see the trajectory of this peak and then it falls off, the peak and falls off, and that's where I mean Bobby Petrino went 5-7 and then 8-5, 10-3 and 11-2. And then of course we know what happened. So I mean, you've got to have, and he was an offensive minded coach. You've got to get someone in here, or I mean Pittman, and get somebody in here on your offensive coordinator. Get somebody in here that can sit there and just take over this offense and make it what it could be. You have the talent. You're going to get the talent. I mean, the biggest thing that I will go along with is if you can recruit in every other sport here at Arkansas and be successful, you can do it in your most important sport, because you get kids to Arkansas and they see the hype and they just quiet the noise of the social media, and they take the hype and the fans that will love them. I mean, could you imagine a team comes in and wins 10, 11 win game? They're going to be remembered forever.
Mhm.
That's just how these fans are. That should be enough to, when you reel that together and you put a winning season or 2 winning seasons together, all that springboards into where now you're a powerhouse. You could be a powerhouse in the West or in the SEC.
Yeah, and one thing I've seen a lot of, I don't necessarily want to say comparisons, but we'll look at Sam Pittman's tenure and we'll compare it with Mark Stoops at Kentucky. Um, What?
Yeah. I'm
Sorry.
shaking my head because I've heard this 3 times. Yeah. Go ahead.
But the thing, everybody wants them to give Pittman what Kentucky gave Stoops. Here's the issue with that. Kentucky is a basketball school. Their fans know that they are a basketball school. Their boosters know that they are a basketball school. So it was one of those things with as dreaded as Kentucky has been, they were willing to let him be there 6, 7, 8 years and figure things out.
Mhm.
Whereas we're in a situation that you have people saying, oh, we're a baseball school. Oh, we're a basketball school. Oh, we're this, we're that. And then if things aren't fixed by year 3 in football, it's fire them and find somebody else. But so it's one of those. It's like, do you want somebody here that's going to have rough patches and maybe hopefully see the other side of it, and maybe just consistently win 7 to potentially 10 wins in a season? And I say potentially because that hasn't happened often. Or is it, if they don't produce after 3 or 4 years, you got to get them the hell out of here?
Well, I want to ask you this, and we're going to compare Mark Stoops to Sam Pittman. All right. Arkansas in the East.
Mhm.
How do they do? And we're talking about how they're doing right now. And even the 9-win season, even their first year of the COVID season. So if you put Arkansas and you give Arkansas Kentucky's schedule, would they be where Kentucky is right now?
No.
So you can't compare. There's been a lot of comparisons. Well, Arkansas is like the Kentucky of the West. No, they're not. Kentucky has had success. They're 5-1 right now. Yeah, they got blown out by Georgia, but we all remember the last time Arkansas played Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
It was 21-0 before I even got the popcorn in the bag. You can, and I can sit there and say, yes, I know the East is easier. The East schedule is easier, and running through the East is a lot easier than the West. But if we're going to compare, would you take Arkansas? What would, and I'm going to use that as my question of the day tomorrow. What would Sam Pittman's record in the SEC be if he had an East schedule? And would that change? Would they be sitting at 5-1 right now?
I look at it like, flip the script. So then you'd be playing, which I know we're playing Florida this year, but you're going to add Tennessee. And then you're going to add, South Carolina, who struggles, but at times flashes some. Georgia. It's one of those things that there's still better teams than you on the other side of the division.
Yeah. Could you beat Missouri right now?
No.
Could Arkansas beat South Carolina right now?
Toss up.
I'd give it a toss up.
Mm-hmm.
Vanderbilt would give them a scare, but I think they would play that. But if you look at it, Arkansas right now, could they beat Florida right now?
No.
Of course, we know Georgia, Missouri. Then they play Tennessee. We're about to find out if Arkansas could beat Mississippi State. Then Kentucky has to play Alabama, South Carolina before they play Louisville, which, of course, we would take somebody else and replace them with maybe an LSU or something. But, that's just this year. What year was, again, I want to go back and see last year's Kentucky schedule. They went 7-6 last year, beat Florida. Could have Arkansas beat Florida last year?
Yes.
Okay. We beat South Carolina last year, Mississippi, and they played Mississippi State, Tennessee, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Georgia. So what would Arkansas's record been differently if you would have put them in the East? That's something we can ponder on and think about,
Yeah. Because this is no knock to since we both played Mississippi State, we got embarrassed by Mississippi State last year. They were riding on a lot of emotions last year with the passing of Mike Leach. So, they did with what they could and beat teams that this year they're not beaten.
Yep. And
So,
Kentucky won that game last year. They
okay.
beat Mississippi State 27-17 last year. Kentucky did.
Mhm.
They
Gotcha.
got blown out by Tennessee. They beat Missouri, but lost to South Carolina. And I'm not saying, now listen, I mean, I want to be very clear. I mean, we can say this is a toss-up. We can say that they're equal teams, but the whole, well, our program is this. I wouldn't say, because Kentucky, back to Benny Snell, they've had success and they have won games that they were supposed to. Arkansas hasn't. Arkansas has lost a lot of games that they were supposed to, and I'm strictly going underneath the Sam Pittman era. You know, there's a lot of, and honestly, I would compare them to the South Carolina. Well, I don't know. Who would you compare them to in the East? Because what was Arkansas's? Because you can't say Texas because that's outside the conference. What was Arkansas's last big conference win? I mean, where you were like an underdog and you pulled it out and you won.
Would it have been 2 years ago?
Quite possibly.
I mean, the three trophy year.
Mm-hmm. That 9-win year.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of the things that, yes, we got to look in the mirror and know that what Arkansas is as a program, and we can say, do this and do that, but we can always say complaints, but okay, so if you want to fire Enos, who would you have? What's your resolution? If you want Sam Pittman gone, what's your resolution? Who would you bring in? Who do you think could come in? And that's the questions we need to be asking ourselves, because the answer might not be there. You might want this person, but do they want to come?
Mm-hmm. That's usually the quick thing is people throw out the fire and get rid of them, but then it's okay. What's your next plan? What's your next step? Because unless you're, like I said, unless you're throwing the bank at them, you got to think about those things.
Yeah. And again, that is going to be another factor when we're talking about this money with this renovation of the stadium, the Big Reds bar, rooftop bar, and all these things, renovation of the Bud Walton Arena. I mean, everything that goes into this athletic program, what they're spending, are they holding out for this buyout? Are they going to give Pittman another year? Because whether they start over, are they looking at it from the business aspect? Well, whether we do it this year or next year, we're going to be in the same position.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we have to lose? What do we have to lose as a program if we give Pittman and Enos another year? I mean, because they could turn this thing around and just, I mean, again, totally with a full year, come back and make something of it. But
yeah,
that's yet to be seen.
Definitely.
But I guess we went on down the rabbit hole pretty quick on this one. But no, I mean, it's a lot of things. Instead of just, ranting and raving about, we really do have to look at all the factors when it comes into this program. And I do believe that as much as people say, Arkansas kind of gets the curse, they get the tough breaks, the injuries and stuff like that. But I really hope they can turn things around, salvages for the fans, and really they need a break. The fans need a break. The program needs a break, and something. And miracles happen. You beat Alabama next week. That'd be a good start to turning this thing around.
That'll change a lot of things.
Well, that will do it for this episode of the Hog Talk podcast. We're going to have a pretty busy week this week. On Tuesday, we're going to be talking via phone to Mike Irwin of Pig Trail Nation. I noticed he's been doing some, back and forth on Twitter and really getting in the weeds of this program. And nobody knows the program as much as he does, maybe Clay Henry. But we're going to have him on it Tuesday evening at 7 to join us. He will be on the phone. That will not be a video version of that, but it will be live. We'll be talking to him about the state of the program, what he thinks. And then Wednesday, we're going to bring back the weekly women's sports report, because there's a lot of good things to talk about when it comes to the women's programs. The volleyball team, softball team outscoring their opponents 53-2 in 5 games this weekend. volleyball team is the highest ranking. You have the number 1 golf team. So Wednesday at 7, we're going to bring that back and really deep dive into all the programs, and really looking forward to bringing that back. Really looking forward to talking with Mike, but we will catch you on Tuesday evening.
Have a good night.